What's up, fellas? My name is Tucker, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about an NBA contender for this upcoming season that I feel like nobody's really talking about. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like rating on it. Check out my socials up there at the top of the screen as well, and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I think it's pretty clear for most people who the real contenders for next season are. If you're doing a very, very short list, I think you have to include Milwaukee, of course, the defending champions. I think in the West, you have to consider the Lakers. And then in the East, I think Brooklyn is certainly still going to be there. I think when you're looking at, you have to pick three teams, those are the three teams that I think a lot of people are going to land on. Everyone else that you would possibly put in this contender category, I think, has question marks. With the Clippers, you've got the Kawhi situation. When is he going to play? How effective is he going to be? How does their regular season record being worse than you would expect potentially impact their ability to make a playoff run once Kawhi does come back? The Sixers have this Ben Simmons thing that continues to be held over them. You have no idea what's going to happen with him, who he's going to be traded for or not. The Nuggets have to worry about the health of Jamal Murray and how that impacts their season whenever he does come back. Keep in mind that it was late in the year when he did get hurt. The Jazz, lack of playoff success in a significant way has to make you nervous in terms of considering them real contenders. It's kind of a we'll believe it when we see it thing with Utah. And the Suns, who obviously made the finals this most recent year, I think a lot of people are considering it to be a bit of a lucky run when it comes to injuries and stuff like that. Can Chris Paul continue to stay healthy? Can he still be an all-NBA caliber guy? Once again, being a year older. And you can throw some other teams in there if you want to. But I think that's kind of the short list of contenders, is that top three. And then those teams I just mentioned with the question marks that come along with them. But I think that there's one team that could play a bigger role in this than a lot of people are expecting. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the conference finals this upcoming year, and that is the Boston Celtics. Okay, so here's why. Here's the case for Boston as like a real contender this season. I think from a talent perspective, they're certainly being undervalued. The combination of Tatum and Brown, not just how good they are, not just their youth and being all-star level players, but being versatile wings, I think, is really critical. It's been viewed as a negative in the past by many, and myself included, and they have to figure out a way to make sure these guys work better together offensively and have more fluidity, which sometimes can be difficult when those two guys are kind of stepping on each other within their role and being on-ball guys and not being elite creators. Yes, it's weird, but having versatile, big, two all-star level players, like I don't think that can be understated. And again, the possibility that they can continue to get better, as by the way, they've gotten every single year. Tatum, I think the Olympic experience could be valuable for him. And from a talent perspective, if you're just looking at every team in the league, the two best players that they have, you could argue that Boston would be in that top 6, top 7 conversation, just strictly from a standpoint of who are their two best players. I think Brown and Tatum can put themselves in the conversation up there again with an opportunity for improvement this year. And can their games coexist? We will find that out this season. It certainly has been a question mark. But again, I think the talent has to be a big part of the equation here. And then you go to the depth as well, which I think there's been perceived depth for Boston, last year and previous years. But I think this year they could have actual, real, tangible depth that provides them versatility and a ton of different lineup options that they just have not had in the past, in addition to a very clear hierarchy of it's Tatum, it's Brown, and it's everybody else. It's not, what is Kemba going to be? He's in and out of the lineup all the time. I think that hierarchy, in addition to the depth behind them, is really, really critical. So when you look at their roster, I think this depth thing is something that was really critical from their offseason. They went from a pretty rigid roster to a really versatile one. I think they can play big, they can play small. They've got a ton of different options at each position. They've got, Marcus Smart, Dennis Schroeder, Chris Dunn, Josh Richardson, who just re-signed a new deal as well at the guard spots. On the wings, of course, Brown, Tatum, the versatility they provide. And at the 5 spot, which has generally been an issue for them over the last couple of seasons, certainly since Al Horford left, you have Horford returning in the Kemba trade. And Robert Williams could be a huge breakout guy this year. I think, at some point I will make a potential breakout players for this upcoming season video, and Robert Williams will probably be on it. What he did in that Nets series, when not fully healthy, by the way, in the postseason last year, I think has to be accounted for. The talent is certainly there. They've got him signed this new long-term deal, and defensively, he could be incredible. He could really be a missing piece for this team. And then you've got plenty of guys behind that as well. I mean, Nesmith looked really good in Summer League. Romeo Langford the ability to just throw 10 or 11 guys out there at any given night is really critical. Not having any bad players on the floor is really critical. It's one of the reasons that I liked Phoenix a lot during the regular season last year. And specifically from like a regular season record standpoint, they have every opportunity to be a top 4 team in the East this coming season, just strictly from a talent and a depth standpoint. And then the last part that I really don't think can be undervalued is the playoff experience that this group has. When you're talking about can they get to the conference finals, Brown, Tatum, Smart, Horford, all these guys have a lot of experience getting to the conference finals, winning big time playoff series. They're not going to be afraid when that time comes around. And I think that needs to be accounted for as well. And then the last point, and you could say this for a lot of different teams, Toronto's probably raising their hand and saying, hey, by the way, we had to play our games in Tampa last year. So 2021 was weird. A lot of teams can say that. And Boston certainly is one of those. Brown gets hurt late in the year. They could have given the Nets a little bit more of a run for their money if he was healthy. The Kemba thing was just a constant distraction in and out of the lineup. They could play well for 3 games, and then Kemba could be awful the next game. Brad Stevens was getting burnt out as a coach, clearly, as he moved on now to a front office role. And then, of course, all the protocol stuff, right? Not knowing who's going to be in and out of the lineup on any given day. And every team had to deal with that. Certainly Boston did as well. But you can just kind of, at certain points, throw out last year. And if you do that, if you just eliminate 2021 from Boston Celtics basketball history, and you look at their last couple of seasons, they've always been involved. They've always been a factor. They've always been a team that you have to hear from in the postseason. And yes, there were times when they had Kyrie and Al Horford and Gordon Hayward, and those guys aren't there. At least they're not as good now if you're considering Horford and then, Irving and Gordon Hayward are gone. But this has always been kind of a team that needs to be accounted for, and I feel like nobody's really talking about them now. And like I said, the 5 spot could be a concern. I think Robert Williams could break out there. I think they have talent. I think they have depth. And you can laugh all you want at the Dennis Schroeder thing. I certainly made plenty of jokes about it. It's unfortunate the way that his contract situation worked out this offseason. But who's going to be more motivated to have a really good season than Dennis Schroeder? He turned down a big extension, lost himself a ton of money, but he's on a 1-year deal this year. Like Dennis Schroeder, when you look specifically at that 2022 free agency class, which we talked about the other day, it's not a good class. Dennis Schroeder could put himself in position to be like one of the 3 best players in 2022 free agency, depending on how things work out for guys like Westbrook, Beal, and Levine. And that could lead to a huge payday for him. Like, there's not going to be anyone more motivated financially than Dennis Schroeder this upcoming season to be really, really good. And I think that he's going to have plenty of opportunities to create on the perimeter. And if he can shoot well and space the floor well off the ball, he's going to be a really critical part of this team, potentially a really positive part of this team as well. So now that I've made all the positive points, you got to talk about, okay, well, why wouldn't it happen? Why wouldn't Boston be a potentially contending team for this upcoming season? Well, for one, the East is really, really good. The days of the East not really having a ton of depth and not really having a ton of true contenders at the top are over. Brooklyn's really good. The Bucks won the title. Philly could be really good. But then if you're talking about, okay, how can Boston be a top 3, top 4 team in the East? There's a lot of other teams to hear from there as well. Atlanta made the conference finals last year. They're young. They're going to get better. They have a trade to make. Miami made all their moves this offseason get better. Same thing for Chicago. Indiana could be significantly better. And the East is going to be heard from. It's not going to be easy for any team to just walk in and be a top 4 team, except for maybe Milwaukee and Brooklyn, assuming that they are still healthy. The Brown and Tatum thing could certainly still be an issue. We still haven't seen, since the other guys, Hayward and Irving, left, we still haven't seen them really coexist in a significant way other than like a your turn, my turn thing. Maybe that'll be turned around with the new coach this year, but that could potentially be another negative. Say what you want about Brad Stevens, but he's generally been, over the last handful of seasons, one of the better coaches in the NBA, and there's no guarantee that their new coach will be up to that task. Now, granted, a new voice could certainly be a huge positive for them, and this guy could end up being really good, but it's at least a bit of a question mark. Last few points I will make here in a positive way for Boston is they do still potentially have a trade to make, whether it's Bradley Beal and the Tatum connection working out there, whether it is all these young guys they have. They do still have options here to make some different moves. And I just think that versatility is once again the name of the game in Boston. They went from a very rigid team in the post-Kyrie era where they tried to bring in Kemba and they didn't really have a ton of options via trade. They didn't have the contracts to make anything work, to now, with Kemba gone, lots of interesting young guys, a clear hierarchy, the ability to make a trade. I just think that it's very easy to see them as a top 4 team in the East next year. And you could, with the turmoil potentially in Philly of them trying to figure out the Simmons thing, you could make an argument that they could maybe even be better in the regular season than Philadelphia as well. So no Kemba. Horford is back. I feel like they figured out the 5 spot a little bit. And up until last year, this was a team that always delivered. We'll have to kind of see what happens with Boston this year, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them in the conference finals. And if you're a conference finals contending team, I feel like at least at this point of the off-season season, it's okay to consider you a contender. If you're a team that I can close my eyes and think they could be in the conference finals, until we actually see you play basketball, I think you are a legitimate contender, and I don't think anybody's talking about Boston in that way. I think people are talking about Boston as like a top 6 team in the East, which in my opinion is way too low for all the reasons that I pointed out in this video. But that is going to be the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you leave a like rating on it. Consider subscribing for videos just like it. Check out the box on screen as well for some of those videos, and check out my socials up at the top of the screen as well. Once again, my name is Tucker. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.